There's something powerful in knowing that you are not here by accident. Each of us has a path, a journey, a purpose that is uniquely designed just for us. Even in those moments of doubt, confusion, or pain, know this: God has a plan for you. Life, as we all know, is not a straight road. There are twists, there are valleys, and sometimes we feel as though we're standing still. But let me tell you something, it's all part of the bigger picture. Every setback, every challenge, every unexpected turn is leading you closer to the divine plan that God has already crafted. Sometimes we can't see it because we're in the midst of it. But trust me, it's unfolding, even when you can't understand it. There are moments when you may question your purpose, question your worth, and wonder if you're on the right track. I want to remind you today, you are exactly where you're meant to be. You are not lost. You are being shaped, refined, and prepared for something far greater than you can imagine. When life feels overwhelming, when you're met with obstacles that seem impossible to overcome, that is the time to lean into faith. Because God doesn't make mistakes, He's intentional. The struggles you face today are building the strength you need for tomorrow. I know there are days when the plan feels unclear, but faith isn't about seeing the whole staircase, it's about taking the first step, even when you can't see where it will lead. That's the beauty of walking with God. You don't have to have all the answers because He already does. You just need to trust. Understand this: no experience in your life is wasted. Every joy, every heartbreak, every victory, and every loss has meaning. They are threads in the tapestry of your purpose. And when the time is right, you'll see how it all weaves together into something beautiful. Your plan is not like anyone else's. Don't be discouraged if your path looks different. Don't compare your journey to others, because your path is divinely tailored. What God has for you is for you. No one else can claim it. No one else can walk it. You are destined for greatness, but you must trust the process. So today, release the need to control every aspect of your life. Surrender. Let go of the idea that you have to figure it all out. God is guiding you even in the moments that feel the darkest. Keep moving forward with faith, because God has a plan for you, and that plan is always for your highest good. Trust in that and watch how life unfolds with grace and purpose. There's a deep sense of peace that comes when we truly understand that God has a plan for each and every one of us. It's comforting to know that we're not wandering through life aimlessly, but that every step we take, every decision we make, is all part of a greater divine design. Trusting in God's plan means believing that everything in your life is happening for a reason, even when you can't immediately see what that reason is. It's knowing that no matter where you are right now, you're exactly where you need to be for your growth, for your journey, and for your purpose. Life, as we all know, can be unpredictable. We face challenges, disappointments, and moments of pure confusion. There are times when we feel completely lost, as though we've taken a wrong turn somewhere and ended up in the middle of nowhere. In those moments, trusting that God has a plan for us can feel like the hardest thing in the world. We wonder why things didn't work out the way we hoped, why we're facing certain hardships, or why the timing of life feels so off. But that's exactly when trust matters the most, when we don't have the answers and we can't see the way forward. Trusting in God's plan doesn't mean we have to understand every detail. It doesn't mean that we'll always know why things are happening as they are. In fact, more often than not, we won't understand until much later, when we look back and see how each moment fit perfectly into the larger picture. Trusting God is about surrendering our need to control the outcome. It's about letting go of the need to know every step of the journey and embracing the mystery of life. We don't have to have it all figured out because God already does. He's seen the end from the beginning, and His plan is always perfect. But how do we trust when life feels uncertain? How do we hold on to faith when everything around us seems to be falling apart? The key is understanding that God's plan is not dependent on our circumstances. It's not swayed by what's happening in the world around us or by the challenges we face. God's plan is steady, unchanging, and always working for our good even when we can't see it. One of the most powerful things we can do is to remind ourselves that God's timing is not our timing. We often have our own ideas about how things should unfold, about the timeline of our lives, and when certain milestones should be reached. But God sees things from a higher perspective. He knows when the time is right, and He knows what's best for us in the long run. There may be delays, detours, or even complete shifts in direction, but none of these are accidents. They are all part of the journey, and they are all leading us to where we're meant to be. It's also important to recognize that trusting in God's plan doesn't mean we sit back and do nothing. Trusting God is an active process. It means stepping forward in faith, even when the path ahead isn't clear. It means taking the next step, even when we don't know what comes after that. Trusting God is about moving forward with confidence, not in our own abilities, but in the knowledge that He is guiding us every step of the way. When we trust in God's plan, we can find peace in the midst of uncertainty. Instead of constantly worrying about the future, we can rest in the assurance that God is already there, working things out for our good. We can stop striving, stop trying to force things to happen, and instead allow life to unfold in the way that it's meant to. That doesn't mean we won't face challenges or obstacles. In fact, trusting God often means walking through difficult seasons, but with the assurance that those seasons have a purpose. Every challenge, every hardship is an opportunity for growth, for refinement, and for becoming the person God has called us to be. Trusting in God's plan also allows us to let go of comparison. It's easy to look at someone else's life and feel like we're falling behind, like we're not achieving enough or progressing quickly enough. But God's plan for your life is uniquely yours. Your path is not meant to look like anyone else's, and your timing is not meant to match theirs. When you trust that God has a plan specifically for you, you can let go of the need to compare and instead focus on walking your own path with confidence and faith. There's a beautiful freedom that comes when we release the need to control everything. When we trust in God's plan, we no longer have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We don't have to have all the answers. We don't have to worry about every little detail. Instead, we can rest in the knowledge that God is in control, that He is guiding us, and that His plan is always for our highest good. There may be times when we doubt, times when we question if we're really on the right path. In those moments, it's important to pause and remind ourselves of God's faithfulness. Look back on your life and see the ways that God has been there for you, guiding you and providing for you, even when you didn't realize it at the time. Every blessing, every opportunity, every closed door that led to something better, those are all reminders of God's perfect plan for your life. When we take the time to reflect on God's faithfulness, it becomes easier to trust that He is still working, even in the moments when we can't see it. In the end, trusting in God's plan is about surrendering our will to His. It's about saying, I may not understand it all, but I trust you, God. I trust that you know what's best for me. I trust that you are leading me where I need to go. It's about releasing the need to control every aspect of our lives and instead allowing God to lead us on the journey that He has designed specifically for us. Trusting God doesn't mean life will be free from challenges. It doesn't mean we won't face difficulties or setbacks. But it does mean that we can face those challenges with a sense of peace and confidence, knowing that God is in control. It means that we can walk through life with faith, even when the path ahead is unclear. Because we know deep down that God's plan is always for our good, always for our growth, and always for our ultimate purpose. Trust in that, and you will find a peace that surpasses all understanding. Recognizing divine guidance in everyday moments requires both an open heart and an attentive spirit. It's about becoming more aware of the subtle ways in which God communicates with us, guiding us along the path He has laid out. Too often we expect grand signs or extraordinary events to confirm that God is directing our steps, but divine guidance is frequently found in the quiet, ordinary moments of life. It's in the soft nudges, the still small voice, and the everyday experiences that, when viewed through the lens of faith, reveal God's presence and purpose. To recognize divine guidance, we must first acknowledge that God is always present and always communicating with us. He speaks to us through our thoughts, feelings, circumstances, and even through other people. The challenge is not whether God is guiding us, but whether we are tuned in to hear Him. Life can be so busy, filled with distractions, noise, and the pressures of daily responsibilities, that we often overlook the subtle ways God is trying to lead us. Recognizing divine guidance requires us to slow down, be still, and make space in our lives for quiet reflection and spiritual awareness. One of the most profound ways God guides us is through our intuition. That inner sense, that gut feeling, is often the Holy Spirit gently prompting us in a particular direction. When we feel a sudden clarity about a decision, or a deep sense of peace about a certain course of action, we are experiencing divine guidance. This inner voice may not always be loud or dramatic, but it is persistent. The more we learn to trust this intuitive sense, the more we can align our actions with God's will for our lives. However, tuning into this guidance requires discernment. Not every thought or feeling is divine guidance, which is why it's important to ground ourselves in prayer, meditation, and spiritual practices that help us stay connected to God. Another way to recognize divine guidance is through the doors that open and close in our lives. Sometimes God's direction comes in the form of opportunities that arise seemingly out of nowhere. A job offer, a new relationship, or an unexpected invitation can be God's way of pointing us in a new direction. Similarly, closed doors such as a missed opportunity or a plan that falls through can also be divine guidance. We may feel disappointment or frustration when things don't go as we hoped, but often God is protecting us from something that isn't meant for us, or He is redirecting us to something better. It's important to remember that closed doors are not signs of failure, they are often blessings in disguise, guiding us toward a path that is more aligned with God's plan. Divine guidance can also be found in our relationships. God often uses the people in our lives to guide us, whether it's through a conversation, a word of encouragement, or even constructive criticism. We may not always recognize it in the moment, but looking back, we can often see how certain people were placed in our lives for a reason. These individuals may offer wisdom or perspective that helps us see a situation more clearly. Sometimes a friend's advice, a mentor's counsel, or even a stranger's kind word can be exactly what we need to move forward. God uses our connections with others as a channel for His guidance, and by paying attention to the relationships in our lives, we can often discern His direction. Circumstances are another way through which God provides guidance. When we encounter unexpected events, whether positive or challenging, these moments often carry messages from God. A sudden detour, a delay, or a coincidence may all be part of a divine plan that is leading us to where we need to be. Even difficulties and struggles can be a form of guidance, pushing us to grow, to change direction, or to rely more fully on God. When we are facing a challenge, rather than asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can shift our perspective and ask, "What is this teaching me?" or "How is God using this situation to guide me?" By viewing our circumstances through a spiritual lens, we can begin to recognize the ways in which God is leading us, even in the most unexpected situations. Prayer is one of the most important tools for recognizing divine guidance. When we are uncertain about a decision or a direction in life, turning to prayer allows us to seek God's wisdom. Through prayer, we open ourselves up to hearing from God, and we invite His presence into our decision-making process. It's important to remember that prayer is not just about asking for guidance, it's also about listening. Often we may pray for answers, but fail to make space to listen for God's response. After praying, taking time to sit in silence, to meditate, and to reflect can help us hear the still small voice of God more clearly. Over time, as we develop a deeper relationship with God through prayer, we become more attuned to His guidance in our everyday lives. Another aspect of recognizing divine guidance is paying attention to the recurring themes or signs in our lives. Sometimes God communicates with us through patterns or repeated messages. We might hear the same advice from multiple sources, encounter the same scripture verse in different contexts, or notice certain themes emerging in our lives. These patterns are not coincidences, they are often God's way of getting our attention. When we start to notice these recurring signs, it's important to reflect on what God might be trying to tell us. What is the message that keeps coming up? What direction is God pointing us toward? By staying open and attentive to these signs, we can begin to see how God is guiding us through the everyday details of our lives. Recognizing divine guidance involves trusting the process. Sometimes we won't have all the answers right away. God's guidance may not come in the form of a clear, immediate direction, but rather as a series of steps that unfold over time. It's important to trust that even when we don't see the full picture, God is leading us. Each step we take in faith brings us closer to understanding His plan. Often divine guidance is revealed in hindsight. When we look back, we can see how God was guiding us all along, even in moments when we felt lost or uncertain. Recognizing divine guidance in everyday moments is about staying open, attentive, and grounded in faith. It's about tuning into the subtle ways God communicates with us, whether through our intuition, circumstances, relationships, or recurring signs. It's about trusting that God is always present, always guiding us, and always working for our good, even when we can't see the full picture. When we cultivate a spirit of openness and reflection, we begin to see that divine guidance is all around us, leading us every step of the way. Learning to trust God's timing is one of the most challenging yet rewarding aspects of our spiritual journey. We live in a world that values speed and instant gratification, where everything is expected to happen immediately. However, God operates on a different timetable. His timing is perfect, but it often doesn't align with our own. Trusting His timing requires patience, faith, and a deep understanding that there is a purpose behind every delay, every wait, and every moment where it feels like nothing is happening. It's in these moments of waiting that some of the most profound growth and transformation take place. When we think about trusting God's timing, it's essential to acknowledge that God sees the bigger picture. While we may be focused on the here and now, concerned with our immediate needs and desires, God has a long-term plan for our lives. He knows what is best for us, not just in this moment, but for our future. There are times when we might feel frustrated because we're not seeing the results we want as quickly as we would like, but God's timing is always intentional. He is orchestrating things in ways we cannot see, ensuring that everything aligns perfectly for the greater good of our lives. What might feel like a delay to us is often divine preparation. One of the most common struggles people face when trusting God's timing is the temptation to take matters into their own hands. When we don't see immediate results, we can become impatient, trying to force outcomes or rush through situations. However, when we take control instead of waiting on God, we often end up making decisions that lead to more confusion or delay. The story of Abraham and Sarah in the Bible is a prime example of this. God promised them a child, but when the fulfillment of that promise didn't happen quickly, they took matters into their own hands. The result was unnecessary complications and heartache. If they had waited for God's timing, they would have avoided much of the pain they experienced. This story teaches us the importance of patience and trust in God's plan, even when it doesn't unfold according to our expectations. Patience is a key virtue when it comes to trusting God's timing. It's easy to be patient when everything is going according to plan, but the real test of patience comes during the waiting periods of life. Whether we're waiting for a breakthrough in our careers, healing from an illness, or clarity in a relationship, these periods of waiting can feel excruciating. However, the waiting process is often where God is doing His most significant work in us. Waiting is not passive, it's active trust. It's during these times that God is molding and shaping us, developing our character, strengthening our faith, and preparing us for the blessings to come. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes 3:11, He has made everything beautiful in its time. This verse reminds us that God's timing is not just perfect, but beautiful. What may seem like a delay to us is actually God's way of ensuring that everything falls into place in the most extraordinary way. Trusting God's timing also involves letting go of our need for control. As human beings, we often want to control every aspect of our lives. We want to plan our future down to the smallest detail, and we want things to happen on our timeline. But life doesn't work that way. We can't control everything, and the more we try, the more anxious and stressed we become. Trusting God's timing requires surrender, releasing our grip on the reins and allowing God to lead the way. It's about acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and that God's wisdom far surpasses our understanding. This act of surrender is incredibly liberating. It frees us from the burden of trying to force outcomes and allows us to rest in the knowledge that God is in control. During the waiting period, it's essential to stay connected to God through prayer and reflection. When we're waiting for something important, it's easy to become fixated on what we don't have or what hasn't happened yet. This can lead to frustration, doubt, and even resentment. But when we turn to God in prayer, we are reminded of His presence and His promises. Prayer is not just about asking God to move faster or to give us what we want. It's about aligning our hearts with His will. It's about finding peace in the waiting, knowing that God's timing is always perfect, even when we don't understand it. Through prayer, we can find the strength to keep going, to trust the process, and to maintain a sense of hope, even in the most uncertain of times. Another important aspect of trusting God's timing is recognizing that His delays are not denials. Just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't happen. There are times when God says wait because He is working behind the scenes, setting things up in ways that we cannot see. There are also times when God says no because He has something better in store for us. Trusting God's timing means believing that He knows what is best for us, even when it doesn't match our desires. It's about having faith that, in the end, everything will work out according to His plan, and that plan is far greater than anything we could imagine for ourselves. In many cases, we don't fully understand God's timing until we look back. Hindsight is often where we can see the beauty of God's plan unfolding. There may be times in our lives when we were desperate for something to happen, only to realize later that if it had happened on our timeline, we wouldn't have been ready for it. Maybe the job we wanted so badly would have been overwhelming if we had received it earlier, or the relationship we longed for wouldn't have been right at that time. It's only when we look back that we can see how God was protecting us, preparing us, and positioning us for something better. Trusting God's timing also helps us develop a sense of gratitude. When we learn to trust that God is working all things together for our good, we can find joy and gratitude in the present moment, even if we're still waiting for certain things to unfold. Instead of focusing on what we don't have or what hasn't happened yet, we can choose to be grateful for what God is doing right now. Gratitude shifts our perspective. It allows us to see the blessings that are already present in our lives, and it helps us cultivate a sense of peace and contentment, regardless of our circumstances. Trusting God's timing is a journey of faith, patience, and surrender. It's about releasing our need for control and allowing God to lead the way. It's about finding peace in the waiting and believing that God's plan for our lives is always for our good. Even when we don't understand the delays, even when we're tempted to take matters into our own hands, we can rest in the assurance that God's timing is perfect. He is always at work, orchestrating things behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, and preparing us for the blessings to come. When we trust His timing, we open ourselves up to experiencing the fullness of His love, grace, and provision in our lives. The idea that God's plan for your life is greater than you could ever imagine is both comforting and empowering. It speaks to the vastness of God's wisdom and love for us, reminding us that no matter how grand our dreams or ambitions may seem, God's vision for our lives far surpasses anything we could conceive. This truth invites us to step into a life of faith, where we trust not only in the promises of God, but also in His boundless ability to create something far more beautiful and purposeful than we could ever envision on our own. When we reflect on the concept that God's plan is greater than anything we could imagine, it's essential to understand that God sees us fully. He knows us better than we know ourselves. He created us with unique gifts, talents, and purposes that are intricately woven into His divine plan. While we might have goals or desires that seem big to us, God's plan encompasses not just our personal fulfillment, but the ways in which we are meant to impact others, bring light to the world, and fulfill His broader purpose for humanity. This means that when we align ourselves with God's plan, we step into a life that is not only about personal success, but about making a meaningful difference in the lives of others. Often our human tendency is to dream within the confines of what we believe is possible based on our current circumstances. We may set goals or have aspirations, but they are often limited by our perceived abilities, resources, or life situations. However, God's plan for our lives is not constrained by these limitations. In fact, He often calls us to step beyond what we believe is possible, to embrace a vision that feels far beyond our reach. This is because God operates in the realm of the miraculous. He takes our limitations and turns them into opportunities for His power and glory to be revealed. What may seem impossible to us is entirely possible with God. One of the key aspects of understanding that God's plan is greater than we can imagine is realizing that His timing and process may not always align with our expectations. We might have a clear idea of what we want or where we want to go, but God's plan often involves a journey that we cannot foresee. This journey may include challenges, detours, or even periods of waiting, but each step is a necessary part of the process. God uses these experiences to shape us, prepare us, and equip us for the greater plan He has in store. Even the difficult seasons of life are not wasted. They are part of the refining process that leads us toward the fulfillment of God's greater vision for our lives. At times, God's plan may involve leading us in directions we never anticipated. We may have our hearts set on a particular path, but God has a way of surprising us by opening doors we didn't even know existed. These unexpected opportunities or changes in direction can be unsettling at first, because they require us to step out of our comfort zones and into the unknown. However, when we trust that God's plan is greater than our own, we can embrace these moments with faith and confidence. We can be assured that God is leading us towards something even better than we had imagined. One of the most powerful examples of God's greater plan can be found in the lives of individuals who have experienced profound transformations or breakthroughs that they never saw coming. Many people have stories of how they pursued one path, only to be redirected by God into something far more significant. These stories often involve moments of surrender, where individuals let go of their own plans and fully trusted in God's guidance. It's in these moments of surrender that God's greater plan begins to unfold in ways that surpass all understanding. We see this in the lives of biblical figures such as Joseph, who, after being sold into slavery and enduring years of hardship, rose to a position of great influence that allowed him to save his people. Joseph's story is a testament to how God's plan is always greater, even when the path to fulfillment is filled with unexpected twists and turns. Another aspect of God's greater plan is the way in which He uses our lives to touch others. Often we think of our personal success or happiness as the ultimate goal, but God's plan is much broader. He uses our lives, our stories, and even our challenges to inspire, encourage, and uplift those around us. When we step into God's greater plan, we become vessels of His love and grace, impacting the lives of others in ways we may never fully understand. Our influence extends far beyond what we can see, as God's plan involves not just our individual lives, but the ripple effects of our faith, love, and service in the lives of others. God's greater plan also involves the fulfillment of promises that we may not even be aware of. The Bible is filled with examples of people who received blessings far beyond what they had hoped for. Abraham, for instance, was promised descendants as numerous as the stars, even when it seemed impossible due to his and Sarah's old age. Yet God fulfilled His promise in a way that far exceeded what Abraham could have imagined. Similarly, God often has promises for us that we may not yet see or understand, but He is faithful to fulfill them in His perfect time and way. It's important to remember that God's plan for our lives is rooted in His love for us. He is not a distant or indifferent God. He is intimately involved in every aspect of our lives, and His plans for us are always good. Jeremiah 29:11 reminds us, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." This verse is a powerful reminder that no matter what we are going through, God's plan is ultimately for our good. His love for us is so great that He desires to bless us, to give us a future filled with hope, and to guide us into a life of purpose and fulfillment. In embracing the truth that God's plan is greater than we could ever imagine, we are called to live with a sense of expectancy and trust. We don't have to have all the answers or know every detail of how our lives will unfold. Instead, we can rest in the assurance that God is in control, and His plan for us is beyond our wildest dreams. This doesn't mean that we won't face challenges or disappointments along the way, but it does mean that we can move forward with confidence, knowing that God is working all things together for our good. Understanding that God's plan for your life is greater than you could ever imagine invites you to live a life of faith, trust, and surrender. It calls you to let go of your limited view of what's possible and embrace the limitless possibilities that come with aligning your life with God's will. His plan is not just about your personal success, it's about fulfilling a greater purpose that impacts the world around you. While the journey may not always be easy or predictable, you can have faith that God is guiding you toward a future that is filled with hope, purpose, and blessings beyond your imagination. When you trust in His greater plan, you step into a life that is far more extraordinary than anything you could have ever dreamed. Life is a journey filled with highs and lows, triumphs and challenges, moments of joy and seasons of struggle. One of the greatest truths we can hold on to during these times is that every challenge we face is part of a bigger picture, a journey that God has carefully designed for our growth and transformation. Embracing life's challenges as part of the journey means recognizing that adversity isn't just a random, unfortunate occurrence, it's a critical part of our spiritual development and a necessary step on the path to fulfilling God's divine plan for our lives. When we encounter obstacles, it's natural to feel frustrated, discouraged, or even defeated. But what if we shifted our perspective? What if, instead of viewing challenges as roadblocks, we saw them as stepping stones? Each trial we endure is an opportunity to build strength, resilience, and deeper faith. It's during the difficult times that our character is tested and refined. Without challenges, there would be no growth. We would remain stagnant, unchanging, and unprepared for the bigger and better things that God has in store for us. In many ways, challenges are like a refining fire. Just as gold is purified by fire, so too are we purified through the trials we face. It is through these experiences that we learn patience, humility, and perseverance. Every challenge presents an opportunity to lean into faith, to trust that God is working even when we don't understand His ways. The Bible tells us in James 1-2-3, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." This verse reminds us that there is a purpose to our pain, that God is using it to build something beautiful within us. When we face hardships, it's easy to ask, why is this happening to me? But a more powerful question to ask is, what is this teaching me? Every difficulty we encounter holds a lesson, something we can take with us as we continue on our journey. Whether it's learning to let go of control, discovering the depth of our inner strength, or gaining empathy for others who are going through similar struggles, challenges are our greatest teachers. They push us out of our comfort zones, force us to confront parts of ourselves that need healing, and ultimately shape us into the people we are meant to be. Sometimes challenges come into our lives to redirect us. What may seem like a setback could actually be God's way of steering us onto a new path, one that is more aligned with our purpose. We've all had experiences where something didn't go as planned, a job didn't work out, a relationship ended, or a door we were hoping would open remained firmly shut. In those moments, it can be hard to see beyond the immediate disappointment. But when we look back, we often realize that those closed doors were blessings in disguise. God knew what we didn't, and He was protecting us from something that wasn't meant for us, or preparing us for something even greater. Embracing challenges as part of the journey also means accepting that we won't always have the answers right away. Sometimes we have to walk through difficult seasons without fully understanding why certain things are happening. It's in these moments that faith becomes our anchor. Faith tells us that even though we can't see the whole picture, God is at work. He is using every trial to strengthen us, to prepare us, and to draw us closer to Him. When we trust in God's plan, we can find peace even in the midst of chaos, knowing that everything is happening for a reason, and that in time we will see the purpose behind our struggles. There's a well-known quote that says, "Smooth seas do not make skilled sailors," in much the same way. A life free from challenges does not make strong, resilient individuals. It's through the storms of life that we learn how to navigate with courage, how to trust God even when the waters are rough, and how to hold on to hope when everything around us feels uncertain. Each challenge we face equips us with the tools we need for the next part of our journey. It's like building spiritual muscle. Every time we overcome an obstacle, we become stronger, more capable, and more prepared for the future. Another important aspect of embracing challenges is recognizing that we are never alone in our struggles. God walks with us every step of the way. He is our strength when we feel weak, our comfort when we feel afraid, and our guide when we feel lost. In Psalm 23:4, the psalmist writes, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff. They comfort me." This verse is a powerful reminder that no matter how dark or difficult the road ahead may seem, God is with us. He is guiding us, protecting us, and leading us toward His perfect plan. One of the most beautiful things about embracing challenges is that it allows us to develop a deeper sense of gratitude. When we go through difficult times and come out on the other side, we gain a greater appreciation for the good things in life. We learn to cherish moments of peace, to celebrate small victories, and to recognize the blessings that we might have otherwise taken for granted. Challenges teach us to be grateful for our strength, for our faith, and for the ways that God provides for us, even in the midst of hardship. It's also important to remember that challenges are temporary. No matter how difficult a season may be, it will not last forever. There is always light at the end of the tunnel. God promises in Isaiah 43:2, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you." This verse reassures us that even though we may face deep waters, we will not be overcome. God is with us, and He will see us through to the other side. Ultimately, embracing life's challenges as part of the journey is about trusting in the process. It's about recognizing that every obstacle we face is a stepping stone towards something greater. It's about believing that God is using our struggles to shape us, to grow us, and to prepare us for the purpose He has for our lives. When we embrace challenges with faith, resilience, and a spirit of gratitude, we are able to move through life with a deeper sense of peace, knowing that every part of the journey, both the good and the difficult, is leading us closer to our divine destiny. Faith is often described as a belief in things unseen, a trust in something greater than ourselves, even when we don't have all the answers. Leaning into faith during times of uncertainty is not just an abstract concept, it's a powerful practice that can transform the way we navigate life's most challenging moments. When everything around us feels unstable, when the path ahead is unclear, faith becomes the anchor that grounds us. It's the assurance that, even when we can't see the full picture, God is at work behind the scenes, guiding us and leading us to where we are meant to be. Uncertainty is a natural part of life. We all go through seasons where we don't know what the future holds, whether it's uncertainty in our careers, relationships, health, or finances. These are moments that can evoke fear, anxiety, and doubt. We may feel like we're walking in the dark, unsure of the next step to take. It's in these moments of uncertainty that faith becomes most critical. Faith allows us to take a step forward even when we can't see the entire staircase. It's the belief that, although we may not know what lies ahead, God does, and He has a plan that is unfolding in ways we may not yet understand. Leaning into faith means surrendering our need for control. As humans, we have a natural tendency to want to control every aspect of our lives. We want to know what's going to happen next, how things will turn out, and what the future holds. But the reality is, we can't control everything. Life is full of twists and turns that we can't predict. Trying to control outcomes often leads to frustration and stress because we are fighting against the flow of life. Faith, on the other hand, invites us to let go of that control. It's about acknowledging that, while we may not have all the answers, God does. It's about trusting in His plan, even when we don't understand it in the moment. One of the greatest challenges we face during times of uncertainty is the feeling of vulnerability. Not knowing what the future holds can make us feel exposed, as if we're standing on shaky ground. But faith offers a sense of security in the midst of that vulnerability. When we lean into faith, we are reminded that we are not walking through life alone. God is with us every step of the way, and He has promised to guide and protect us. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 41:10, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." This verse is a powerful reminder that no matter how uncertain life may feel, God's presence is a constant source of strength and support. Faith also helps us to shift our perspective during uncertain times. Instead of focusing on what we don't know or can't control, faith encourages us to focus on what we do know, that God is good, that His plans are for our good, and that He is always working on our behalf. When we lean into faith, we begin to see challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. We start to recognize that every season of uncertainty is a chance to strengthen our trust in God, to deepen our relationship with Him, and to develop the qualities that will prepare us for the next stage of our journey. In times of uncertainty, our faith can also be a source of hope. It's easy to feel discouraged when things aren't going as planned or when we're faced with the unknown. But faith reminds us that our current circumstances are not the end of the story. God is still writing the narrative of our lives, and the best is yet to come. When we hold on to faith, we are able to maintain a sense of hope, even in the midst of difficult situations. This hope is not based on wishful thinking or blind optimism, but on the firm belief that God's promises are true, and that He is faithful to complete the work He has started in us. Another aspect of leaning into faith during uncertainty is learning to embrace the waiting period. Often uncertainty comes with a sense of waiting for clarity, waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for God to reveal the next step. Waiting can be difficult, especially in a world that values instant gratification. But faith teaches us that there is purpose in the waiting. It's during these periods of waiting that God is working behind the scenes, aligning the right people, circumstances, and opportunities for our good. The waiting period is not wasted time, it's a time of preparation. Just as a seed must be planted in the dark soil before it can grow, so too must we often endure periods of uncertainty before we can fully step into the next season of our lives. Leaning into faith also requires us to stay connected to God through prayer and reflection. During times of uncertainty, it's easy to become overwhelmed by our fears and doubts. But when we take the time to quiet our minds, to seek God's presence, and to pray for guidance, we are reminded of His constant love and care for us. Prayer is a way to center ourselves in faith, to release our worries to God, and to trust that He is guiding us even when we can't see the way forward. It's through prayer that we can find peace in the midst of uncertainty, knowing that God hears us and that He is always working for our good. One of the most important things to remember during times of uncertainty is that faith is not a passive state, it's an active choice. It's a choice to trust God, even when the path ahead is unclear. It's a choice to believe in His goodness, even when we don't understand why certain things are happening. It's a choice to move forward with confidence, knowing that God is in control and that He is working all things together for our good. There will always be moments in life when we don't have all the answers, but that's where faith comes in. Faith allows us to step into the unknown with courage, to trust that God is leading us, and to believe that, no matter what happens, His plan is for our good. Leaning into faith during times of uncertainty is about embracing the unknown with confidence, knowing that God's love, guidance, and provision are always with us. It's about releasing our fears, trusting in His perfect timing, and walking forward with the assurance that we are never alone. In conclusion, recognizing and embracing the truth that God's plan for your life is greater than you could ever imagine is the key to living with faith, purpose, and fulfillment. While life may not always unfold the way we expect or desire, trusting in God's perfect timing and infinite wisdom allows us to navigate challenges with grace and patience. Every step, every delay, and every unexpected turn is part of a divine process that shapes us into who we are meant to be, leading us towards something far more beautiful and meaningful than we can comprehend. When we surrender our plans to God and allow Him to guide us, we open ourselves up to the miraculous, to blessings beyond our wildest dreams, and to a life of deeper purpose that touches not only our own hearts, but the lives of those around us. So as you continue your journey, trust that God's plan is unfolding perfectly, and it is greater, more abundant, and more powerful than anything you could ever imagine.